Hello, and welcome to our course, Human Rights in World History. My name is Bonny Ibhawoh, and I'll be your professor for this course. My areas of research and teaching interests are international human rights and peace and conflict studies. I also teach courses in African and African diaspora history, imperial history, and legal history. As a historian of human rights, I'm interested in the historical development of human rights ideas and movements around the world. I'm also interested in examining the key events and personalities that have shaped human rights. I have researched and taught human rights history in universities in Africa, Europe, and North America. I've also worked as a researcher and consultant for human rights institutes and think tanks, such as the Carnegie Council for Ethics and International Affairs in New York, and the Danish Institute for Human Rights in Copenhagen. I have written books on human rights. One of them is titled Imperialism and Human Rights, and the other is titled Human Rights in Africa, which offers a comprehensive history of the development of human rights ideas in Africa. So what is this course really all about? Why do we need to study human rights history? The answer is pretty obvious. We live in the age of human rights. The doctrine of human rights has become the dominant language for public good around the world. It has become the language of choice for making and contesting entitlement claims, spawning what some historians have described as a global human rights revolution. A revolution of norms and values that has redefined our understanding of ethics and justice. From interstate relations to interpersonal encounters, there is growing interest in the history of human rights. But how did human rights become such an important part of our everyday lives? What are the historical origins of modern human rights? These are some of the central questions that we will be addressing in this class. The international community has made significant progress in recognizing and protecting human rights around the world. But there remains contradictions and limitations on human rights protection. We need to recognize these contradictions and limitations as a way of moving human rights forward and making them more inclusive. In this course, we will pay particular attention to the paradoxes and contradictions of human rights discourses, the gap between human rights theory and practice, and the gap between human rights idealism and real human rights conditions. The study of human rights can be approached from a variety of disciplinary perspectives: historical, legal, sociological, political, anthropological, and many more. In this course, we will be taking a mainly historical approach. Our focus will be on exploring the development of human rights ideas, texts, and movements through time in different political, social, and cultural contexts. Although our focus is historical, we will also draw on other disciplinary perspectives in our study of human rights. Our approach to human rights history will juxtapose the universal and the particular, the local and the global, emphasizing how local events shape global trends and how global trends in turn determine local experiences. What does a historical approach to human rights entail? How do we do a history of human rights in ways that are inclusive? Although human rights have become prominent in today's world, the ideas that have shaped the notion of human rights have deep historical roots. religious and secular, ethics, morality, and justice in various societies and cultures have contributed to define contemporary human rights. In this course, we will examine the global historical evolution of the idea of human rights from antiquity to the present day. We will explore how early philosophical thought and historical events influenced the modern concept of human rights. The course takes a thematic and chronological approach, focusing on both the theory and practice of human rights. It also focuses on key texts, ideas, events, and personalities that have shaped the development of human rights. We begin with a discussion of the key conceptual and theoretical debates over the meaning of human rights. We then trace the development of the notion of human rights through ancient religious texts, the discourses of classical philosophy, Renaissance and Enlightenment thought, and other ideas of the early period. We examine the impact of the 18th century political revolutions in Europe and the Americas on the advancement of ideas about human rights. We also examine the impacts of slavery, imperialism, the world wars, the Holocaust, and other genocides of the 20th century on the modern human rights movement. As a historical study of the development of human rights, we will pay particular attention to understanding and analyzing primary documents relating to human rights. The course will also draw on first-person accounts of human rights ideas and events, documentaries, and film clips. The course is intended to provide students with a comprehensive and critical understanding of human rights events that have shaped contemporary human rights conditions, as well as the ability to conduct independent research on human rights topics. In this course, we will review the influence of culture, history, political ideologies, and globalization on the promotion of human rights and social justice at both international levels and at domestic levels. Our approach will be comparative, thematic, and chronological. We will draw case studies from different parts of the world and examine how local histories and global movements combine to shape human rights and social justice movements in various societies. Questions of human rights can be difficult, contentious, and even polarizing. In discussing human rights topics in this course, our goal as students of history is to strive for open-mindedness and scholarly objectivity. While facts must guide historical interpretations, there are often no solitary truths, but many claims to the truth. To do history is to grasp the origins and rationale of particular truth claims. I will therefore encourage you throughout this course to think critically about the conventional wisdoms you're familiar with, to test what you hear, see, and read for consistency of reasoning, correctness of fact, and accuracy of judgment. In this course, we will use both primary and secondary sources. Primary sources are the first or most immediate record of a situation, event, or phenomenon being studied. Often, they convey the immediacy of the subject matter. These may include eyewitness reports, official government documents, or private papers, such as diaries and journals. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are sources that have been interpreted by others and recorded by others. Such documents do not have the immediacy of primary sources. This could include books, journal articles, and magazine reports. In working with primary sources in this class, I encourage you to consider the context in which they were produced. Critically interpret the information they contain. and relate them to other relevant materials that we might be using in this class. I encourage you to consider similar questions of the scholarly accounts that we use, the debates among historians and other scholars, as well as the changes, continuities, and silences in the field of human rights. Finally, I would like to remind you that history is not only about reading texts and writing essays, it is also about listening, observing, and participating. So active participation is required of all students in this class. I expect students to do the assigned readings for every class where required and come prepared for class discussion, both in class and on our online forum. I look forward to embarking on this journey to learn with you some of the most important questions about human rights that have shaped our world.